sexual and reproductive rights will be at the center of a 3-day conference set to take place in Pretoria from today. Included in the list of discussion topics will be forced sterilisation of HIV-positive women and abortion. For more on this, we're joined this morning by Jacques van Zuydam. He's the Chief Director for Population Development at the Department of Social Development. Jacques, thanks very much indeed for coming onto the program this morning. It's right on time, this conference, for Human Rights Month, which we are marking. We just had Human Rights Day in our country just yesterday. But give us a sense of what sparked the need for this conference to take place.
Yes, thanks. Thank you very much for the invitation. Yes, what sparked the need is, we in South Africa, of course, we enjoy almost like the full portfolio of sexual and reproductive health and rights. But as we also know, many reports through the years have highlighted the fact that not all people necessarily on a day-to-day basis enjoy those rights and enjoy easy access to the kinds of services that support those rights. So over a period of time, and with particular intensity over the past 6 months, we've really sort of gone around the country and tried to identify, but what are the factors that hinder people's enjoyment of those rights? Now, the framework within which the conference is being framed, as well as these conversations, is the framework of sexual and reproductive justice, which in essence asks the question, when one has those rights, are you really enjoying the rights, and what are the factors in society, which includes the service delivery environment, as well as other social structural factors that hinder people's access to services that would ensure the enjoyment of those rights, and then particularly, of course, women. So one does get, a whole lot of, let's say anecdotes, but also specific instances where reports are received of people not being able to enjoy their rights because specific service providers maybe break the law or whatever. So we need to try and identify those things, pull it all together in a single framework, and then prioritize the addressing of, in essence, the issues that hinder people's access to the enjoyment of their sexual and reproductive health and rights.
So it sounds like it's sort of in two parts. It's the access issue insofar as sexual and reproductive rights are concerned. That's on the one hand. And then it's knowing your rights insofar as sexual and reproductive health is concerned. And when I talk about that second option, what comes to mind is that horrific issue around forced sterilisation of HIV-positive women. That comes down to education on the issue, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed. Part of what we've heard over the past 6 months in consultation with civil society groups, youth, and other stakeholders across the country is that very often people do not know their rights, which means there has to be a information education, communication component, and a capacity building component as well, which is also one of the themes that will be discussed at the conference, is, to make sure that people know and understand their rights. I think it's also important to emphasize, the references to the entire spectrum of sexual and reproductive health and rights. So it's the right to bodily integrity, the right to not be invaded, basically, through forced sterilization, for example, but also, the right to access to abortion services, and similarly also the right, when one chooses to have a baby or start a family or be a single parent or whatever, to all the possible support that is necessary to raise the child properly, to give the child the opportunities, starting from nutrition right through to education, to enjoy a fulfilled childhood, as well as, be placed in the best opportunity to prepare for adulthood. So the conversations cut across all issues. It isolated a few dozen specific issues, but at the same time, one wants to ensure that, that when one sort of works towards sexual and reproductive justice, that there's a whole of society approach in which everyone plays a role as well, because, the government is responsible for service delivery. The government is responsible for protecting our rights. But in day-to-day life, people around you, community members, your partner, your workplace, etc., all have a role to play in order to ensure that, that what you live and experience is justice.
It sounds like, and surely this must result in an alignment across government departments as well. So not only your Department of Social Development, but the Department of Health, the Department of Justice. Is that happening?
Yes. Yes, yeah. All the departments have been participating in the program and will be in attendance during the conference. Basically, within the Department of Social Development, we have the National Population Unit, which is responsible for integrating the implementation of the population policy across government departments. So we don't work in a specific department. Our mandate is basically to forge that integration. We've also had successful engagements with the corresponding departments in all the provinces thus far, which is also important because in many social services, it's the provincial departments that deliver the services. And it's important to make sure that they are on board in this kind of endeavor as well.
Yeah. These kinds of conversations, like the ones you'll no doubt be having when this conference kicks off in Pretoria today, are incredibly important, Jacques. How do you gauge the importance or the success, rather? How do you gauge the success of a conference like this? Do you end off and say that these are our goals for the next 12 to 18 months, whatever the time period is? And then, how do you ensure that the kinds of decisions that are taken at the conference actually bear fruit in reality?
Yes, we are entering the conference with a report and recommendations that we've built up over the past 6 months in the provincial consultations. So in addition to, listening to papers and speeches and so on, there will also be commissions in which the conference delegates, which includes government officials, academics, civil society representatives and youth representatives, will then review that report, add to the recommendations and so on, and that will then be processed through to cabinet within the months immediately after the conference. At international level, a committee which is called the High Level Commission on the continued implementation of the International Population Program has developed a kind of a monitoring and evaluation framework for countries to use in measuring their success towards achieving sexual and reproductive justice. So we'll obviously use that framework, which is scientifically very well founded, to properly monitor progress and then to continue probably on an annual basis, evaluate where are we at, where are the areas that we are not making progress, etc. Because it will be an ongoing program of, on the one hand, advocacy, but on the other hand, of course, monitoring where service delivery is improving and where more attention is needed.
Yeah, we hope to get some feedback from you as well once the conference does wrap up. Jacques, let me thank you for your time this morning.